Okay, looks like we're streaming on YouTube.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Town Hall Feasibility Study Committee. I'm just going to read the remote meeting script because I have it handy. So this, pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to the extending certain COVID-19 measures, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. The order allows the Town Hall Feasibility Study Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. All members of the Town Hall Feasibility Study Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. This meeting will not feature public comment. Each vote taken this evening will be conducted by roll call vote. So Dario, as Vice Chair, would you like to just do a members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative kind of a thing?
Sure. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative as to being present. I'll just read who's on the screen. Aaron Hutchins.
Present, Mr. Vice President.
Kristen Wickstead.
Here.
Ashley Davies.
Here.
Linda Brankel. You're muted.
Here.
All right. Sean Thompson.
Here.
Judy Boyle.
Here.
And Scott Charpentier.
I'm here, Dario.
And Diane Wackel.
Here.
And I'm here. So all present and accounted for.
Well, actually, I think we should
Oh,
just,
no, one's missing.
yeah, or is it just one?
Jim?
Bill Pierce is missing, and is anyone else?
I think Bill Pierce, and then I think Mike Gallagher was invited to attend, but I haven't heard.
Okay.
Yep, the only voting member missing is Bill Pierce.
Okay,
Sure.
great. Super.
I would make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted, except I wrote the minutes, so I don't know that that's appropriate, so somebody else can do it.
I will make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
And I will second that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, motion is made to accept the minutes. All in favor? Aaron Hutchins,
Aye.
Kristen Wickstead.
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't actually there.
Okay, Ashley Davies,
Yes.
Linda Brankel,
Aye.
Sean Thompson,
Yep.
Judy Boyle,
Aye.
and Scott, you and Diane are not voting, is that correct?
Yeah, Diane, me, and Sean, and in the event Mike Gallagher showed up, we are not voting members.
Okay.
But you do have adequate presence tonight to approve the minutes.
Okay,
You
and then
Kristen abstaining.
I approve as well.
Okay. So the minutes are approved. Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron, for doing my job.
Dario, I'd be happy to give you a quick intro on the next agenda item if you like, and then
Sure, any help you guys can give, please help. You're not stepping on my toes. You're carrying me along.
Okay. So reviewing the feasibility study, the committee received an email with a link from the former Assistant Town Administrator, Becca Meekins. In that link, it included a memorandum that outlined and summarized how we got to where we are today, or where we were in the end of July. Yep, Dario, and it also included all three of the respondents' packages. And there were staff internally that did a technical review of the submissions, including compliance with the minimum criteria, as well as the comparative evaluation criteria. Those staff members were myself, Sean Thompson, the building inspector, Bob Federico, and Becca Meekins. We completed it. The rankings I have here totaled. I don't know if you want to hear how staff ranked them before you discuss and deliberate, or if you want to wait till after discussion and deliberation, and I can let you know how we rank them. We all rank them, I don't want to say the same, but we all rank them in the same hierarchy. They got different grades from each one of us, but they all fell in the same line. So that's kind of setting the table for you, Dario.
I think it's probably best we go in unbiased. Does that make sense? And then whatever people say, we say, and then bring in the rest of the folks' opinions.
I would recommend that as well.
Okay. So in starting this off, you know, I read through the RFP, and I'm assuming you guys did. There's a lot to read in all of this and in all the submissions. And I guess in any particular order, or whoever wants to comment on what their thoughts were on each of the three submissions, I guess I'm all ears. We had criteria laid out, and in the minutes of the last meeting, I did comment on something that, through my experience, was, I'll say, much more important than most normal criteria, with respect to, in the case of these three, they all meet the criteria. Any of them could do the project. So they all meet that minimum threshold. Then it's really what's most important to us, kind of the end users of the service. And I guess I did state it in the minutes. To me, it was most important. And again, if you guys don't agree, that's fine, but I could just tell you from my experience, it's really the person or persons assigned to your project, the ones doing the work. And if you hired our company to do a newspaper facility, and you got John Rose, who's a licensed architect, I've done 400, Dario Designs has done 400, John Rose has done 0. And if he's assigned to your project, that's nice that Dario Designs is the best in the world at it. But if you don't get a person that's done it, you're really not getting the expertise that we want. So that's why I pointed that out. And it's only from having done it many, many times, successfully and unsuccessfully, what I've learned is it's really the people on your job that count. All the legal stuff, their finances and everything else have to be in order. And all three of these firms, from what I saw, everything was in order on a lot of the basic criteria. So that's what that comment was about. And I figured I'd throw that out now, just from how I look at it. Now I'll leave it up to everybody else to comment. And if Scott, you've got a direction or method of going through this, I'm all ears.
I think the most productive way to go would be to go one firm at a time through the committee. Actually, we did that on the fire station building committee selection for the architects. I think it keeps a little more structure, focusing on a single respondent and then moving on to the next one. So what order you choose, Dario, it's indifferent, but that's probably the most productive way to go.
I don't have a choice, so why don't we just do alphabetical? I think that's BH plus A. And then we also have a criteria. I'm not sure if we have to adhere to that form that was given to us, but I think it's a good form to start with, just to make sure that these firms do check all those boxes.
And staff used exactly that rubric to evaluate in a very, rigorous fashion. It was structured and not a lot of dialogue. We did it independent of each other, and came up with our values. So this may be more productive to be a bit more of a narration of what your thoughts are and opinions. And then I can come in with where our rubrics were relevant to like hard data.
Yeah, and ours added up to 110.
That's correct.
Okay, first I
You
thought
get
it was math error. I kept adding it.
You get extra credit when you're really good.
Fair enough. Okay. So whoever wants to start, I'm all ears.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, if I could, and certainly the other members of the committee can weigh in, but I think of all the members of the committee, you probably have more expert knowledge in this field than the rest of us. So respectfully, I guess I'd ask that we start with you.
Okay.
Is that okay with the other
Yeah.
members of the committee?
I'll join you in putting Dario on the spot.
Oh, that's
Okay.
fine. That's fine. So I went through all their BH+A requirements, and they, to me, it was important. The biggest thing I looked for, again, was the individual and the exact building type. Because if you did government work, that's great, but if you haven't done a town hall, then I don't want to be the person that you cut your teeth doing a town hall on. And then I would look at which individuals did the town hall work. And that's really, to me, just kind of cutting to the meat of who's going to be doing your project. So BH+A has done a fair amount of town hall work. The pick or the principal in charge, and again, it's more, kind of dressing on the person doing the real work. The pick isn't nearly as important as the project manager. The project manager is the person that you're working with day to day. And in the case of BH+A, Rachel was the project manager. So, and again, to back up, I looked at all the basic criteria, which they all seem to meet with the lawsuits and complying. They're all good at doing the green, the lead work. Icon was woman owned, which is good for like kind of the minority addressing that, but all the firms were good. So I'm not going to repeat all that stuff. I did go through that and didn't find any holes. And if you guys did, that's great. So then I went to the org chart, and then I went to projects that the company's done, and then I went to the projects that the people had worked on. So when I look at Rachel's resume, which I'm looking at right now, there's a ton of public work, but it's senior center, library, community building, library, daycare, apartments. There wasn't a town hall there. And that kind of, hit me saying, okay, now we've got a person that's never done a town hall doing our town hall assessment. They have done town halls. And I'm saying, okay, well, if they did town halls, who did them? And then I went all the way back to the projects they had done. And Joel Bargman is the one that did a lot of the town hall work. So, and he's not listed here as the pick or the PM. So if I was to sit and interview these people, I would say, how does his knowledge get to us via Rachel? So he has to either be much more involved, or it's hard for me to say, okay, let's work with a firm that's done 8 or 10 town halls, but a person that has done none. So they do have a lot of town hall experience, but it wasn't the people that were assigned to our project. And for full disclosure, when I saw Joe Bargman's name, I want to say it was 3 years ago, hired BHG to do the working drawings for us on a 190 unit apartment complex in Sharon. And they did a great job. There's no conflict of interest. I'm not hiring them, but I've got intimate experience working with a company, and they're a good company. But I would want Joel somehow involved because he has the expertise we're seeking. So that's my comments on them. Everything else is good except the person on our job.
And I would have to agree. Deborah Robinson is identified, and she has only one project. She's listed as lead on only one town hall project.
Exactly. And she hadn't done town halls. And Linda, to that point, I did look at Deborah's, but she was really strong in historic, which is good because, you know, if we're looking at White Cliffs or Four Main, those are historic buildings. It's good to have that in your toolbox, but she's also not the person working on the project. You know, so I think she could be a helper as well. But I think if I was interviewing these guys personally, I would tell them before they came in, you better bring someone who's done a town hall because this is a town hall. Okay,
Dario, can I ask a question?
sure.
What does it indicate when the applicant identifies a project manager that you feel like is not the appropriate project manager? Is that indicative of the company saying, without our input, I guess, without the town's input, that if they were selected, that's who they would advance as project manager here? I mean, what does it say about this company that they have selected to identify Rachel Young as the potential project manager?
It's, you know, it's, to me, it's one of two things. Joel's too busy, you know, so too busy for us. Or, you know, a lot of times one of the other guys put the head of their company here as the pick, and there's no way that person's going to be giving us any time, but it's an impressive resume with a bunch of Ivy League colleges, but that doesn't do anything for us. And I think they tried to twist the words to say public building because the people didn't address town hall. And you know, if I hadn't done one and I wanted to get the work, I could only emphasize my strong points, which is doing public work. But if I had someone that had done a town hall, I would have to have them involved, even if they didn't have time to be the principal in charge. That person should sit at least in the programming meeting so they can ask the right questions on how to design and program. Programming means, you know, defining your needs. They should be at least be in those meetings to ask the appropriate questions.
You don't think they're trying to pull one on us?
I don't know, because the other firm did it too. And theirs, I think, was more trying to pull because they hid the org chart way in the back on a page like 120. And that's the first thing I go looking for is who's going to work on my job. So is it possible they were trying to? Yes, Aaron, I don't know. I feel wrong accusing them of that, but that's absolutely a possibility. But if they were trying to do that, then I wouldn't have showed all these town halls with Joel Bargman's name on them. Because they do have his name when you look at the sample projects. It said project manager Joel Bargman, project manager Joel Bargman. And I said, okay, in their town hall. I said, okay, they have the expertise. We're just not getting it.
I wonder whether there's a thought about thinking about the building in a broader way. So I wondered, I mean, town halls are kind of a multifunction kind of building. And in some of these cases, they were buildings that were multifunction, even though they weren't specifically town hall, they were multifunction areas. So I wonder if that could be a consideration.
I think so, Linda, but they were multifunction, not including a town hall. They were, if I look at, in this case, Rachel's, they're mostly community, senior center, daycare. These are facilities that have people living there 24/7. These are facilities with multi-units with bathrooms. Daycare, you have a whole bunch of different codes kicking in for the medical profession. Senior living, you have a whole bunch more handicap. A town hall, in all honesty, is nothing more than a kind of a glorified public office building. There's really nothing in a town hall that the other guys did all these fire stations and police stations, and that's a big deal with sally ports and poles and sleeping quarters. A town hall is, you know, it wants to look nice. You want a nice face to the public. It wants to be nice and bright when you go in, easy to navigate. First floor building department, second floor engineering, third floor taxes, but they're nothing more than offices that have separate public reception areas and some nice conference and gathering areas. It's really a kind of a high-end office building by definition, by its function. The other buildings, if they were complete buildings that included a town hall, then that's great, because then the other three, I don't care as much, but they did a town hall. But these were community buildings, which are, again, different. You know, like our senior center is much different than a town hall.
Mhm.
There's a lot of work being done in town halls privately where they have to review drawings or review submissions or you know, go out and check the taxes and utilities. And I looked for that in Rachel's, because I just underlined it as I went through. You know, the first one was a senior center, a library, community center. I didn't know what a COA building was, but senior center, classroom, library, community center, childhood classroom, daycare, apartments, lofts. And I'm saying, okay, I read the first 10, I don't see town hall.
COA is Council on Aging.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
it's like a senior center.
But that's, and I think that's the point. If I'm trying to do a town hall and I have experience with a town, it's the first thing I would put in my resume, you know?
Okay.
Anyway, that was my thoughts on those guys. Are they capable and competent? Yes. Could they do it? Yes. Could they do a good job? Yes, if they brought Joel in. And I do know Joel, but not because I know him, but because he's done town halls.
And you're talking specifically about the feasibility study, not necessarily managing the work, but you think it takes that
Right.
kind of expertise to do a feasibility study as well.
So my opinion on the feasibility study, and they're going to be doing preliminary floor plans on whatever it is. They're going to be doing the programming. The first 5% of any job determines 95% of all the expenditures. There's nothing more important in the design of a building than the very beginning. Because think about the decisions we're making. We're deciding, is it White Cliffs or are we renovating the existing building? That's where you want the brains. Later on, whether we pick brick or we go to clapboard, that is so irrelevant based on the big decisions. And all the big decisions are, it's like doing the physical before the doctor prescribes medicine or an operation. You got to know everything. The treatment's kind of easy because here's how you do it. It's figuring out what you need to do. So the most brains, in my opinion, need to be on the front end work, because I've written articles on this where you spend 5% of the project money up front, you're making 95% of the dollar decisions.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good to know. Should we
Well-
move on to another?
Well, I was going to say, at the risk of taking Mr. Vice Chair's position here, is there anybody else on the committee that wants to weigh in on BH&A?
Please, yes.
I mean, I would have never thought of any of that, so it's so helpful to have you here, Dario. But I will say that BH&A, I was the least impressed with, just their presentation and what their experience was, and other facets that they brought to the table. So that was my opinion of them.
I was going to ask you, Dario, were Joel the PIC on this? Would that have changed? And you really haven't given us an overall, opinion on this BH&A yet, but if you saw his name at the top, would you have a different viewpoint of the whole picture?
I would feel better that he was put on because he's done town halls.
Yeah.
but I would never hire them without their commitment to him being more intimately involved than a PIC.
Okay.
It's not, and I'm being 100% open with the fact that I've worked with these people, but it's not about having worked with them. It's about doing the right thing. And I want, again, simple analogy, go to the doctor, my knee hurts. Okay, we've got the eye doctor here. What can we do for you? Oh yeah, I've got, the cardiologist here. My knee hurts. I need the guy that works on knees. That's what hurts. And that's where we are on this. And the hospital may have done 500 million knee surgeries, but the person that I'm looking at, is an eye doctor, and he's not going to help my knee.
I just have one other nitpicky thing. None of them met the criteria for automobile insurance.
Well, that's interesting. Then they have to walk. And I do want everybody's input on this stuff. And there's one other thing in marketing, and I think Ashley spoke to it. There was an expression that we were taught in school: if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with be something. Yeah, and so sometimes it's really impressive to look at, but there's no meat there. And these guys do have meat, but I'm more important more impressed with the people doing the work, and sometimes they're not as fancy in their displays.
Would HKT be next then, Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Aaron, for helping me. I'm not good leading the pack.
You're doing a fabulous job.
Okay. All right. So these were the guys who hid the org chart way in the back. And I'm looking at it, and their pick was William Hammer, and Amy Dunlap was the project manager. So when I went to the PM stuff, Amy had not done a town hall either. She is police, fire station, public safety, and public safety. And that was, again, kind of depressing, because they have done, or no, I don't think they have a single town hall. Oh, no. Yeah, I couldn't find any town halls in any of the resumes, but they've done a ton of public work.
There was one.
Was there one? Okay.
One in the last 5 years. And the others were prior to 2018.
Okay. And I think there was a lot, but none of the people on our job had done any of them. And then the pick, I went through his too. William Hammer was firehouse, police station, firehouse. There was master plan for the development of new town center. I take that back. And then municipal buildings, municipal structures, DPW, police, and police. So his focus was also not town hall. And if we didn't have someone that did a bunch of town halls, that might be the choice. But he's also the owner of a huge company, the pick, and probably wouldn't be involved. But if we went with them, I would insist that he be at the programming and initial decision-making meetings, so that we get someone that's done these, not someone that's working for the person that's done these. It's very similar to BH plus A.
How critical is a current license?
Architectural license?
Yep.
It's not.
Okay.
I mean, legally, someone's going to stamp it from their company that'll have a license. But I've worked with architects that never got their license that are better than hundreds of architects that are registered. It's really the skill set of the person involved. And if that's a criteria, then I should get every job. I've got 49 licenses in the US and 6 of them overseas, but it doesn't make me any better than anybody else. It's just stamps and sitting for that stupid test. A lot of times firms will have people that specialize that are not licensed, but they're the smart people in the firm. And then the owner of the firm or a licensed architect who has to, by law, directly oversee the project, stamps and seals the drawings.
So how do you know if they have been disbarred?
They couldn't practice again. They couldn't practice or sign a drawing. Are you saying, is this guy not have his license anymore?
Well, Hammer doesn't have a license, it's expired, but I just wondered about that fifth criteria. I'm not sure how you determine whether someone has been debarred.
What I would do is in the interview, I would ask them flat out, have you ever lost your license in any state for any reason? Like now I'm not working in North Dakota, South Dakota, so I put my license on hold, but if I reactivate the license, I have to pay the dues for the years I wasn't doing. I've never lost a license.
Mhm.
But you can lose a license because we're held to a much higher ethical standard than actually most professionals, because we're very, very subject to bribes and collusion. I could spec out a brick for a buddy who makes brick and he charges you guys twice as much and I get, a new car. And it's not illegal. It's unethical. And that's where you lose your license, because we can do a lot of very unethical things that are not illegal. And you will lose your license if you ever get caught or if someone drops a dime on you, for sure.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on HKT?
Two projects caught my eye. The Seth Ventris building was a couple of the buildings have similar history to some of the buildings that we're discussing. So this, they kind of turned it into, they might be a good developer for White Cliffs if we go that way. But the Cambridge City Hall Annex, $10 million, granted it was 2004, but a 33,000 square foot renovation. So, I kind of said, this is kind of in our wheelhouse. But like the rest of you have said, I did feel that they were more heavy on public safety buildings than specifically town hall. But those two projects kind of made me feel that, they're certainly capable of
Judy,
giving us something we can get our teeth into.
I'm 100% in agreement with that, except the people that did them may be working for Dario Designs.
Okay.
That's the whole problem, is you got to get the people that did the work and that on your job. So those projects are 100% applicable, but you have to find out who the PM is, because if you don't get that PM, it just doesn't matter. It's a pretty picture in my portfolio, but I didn't work on that guy's knee. Somebody else did his knee surgery and I'm taking credit for it.
So, I guess I might be jumping ahead here, but, I know nothing about the process. Is it possible to go back to any of the forerunners here and say, we like your package, but we don't like who your pick is?
I think we were going to go through personal interviews on all three, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the time when you get to say, I love this. However, in the case of the other one of BH Posay, I want Joel Bargman involved because he has the experience in our building type. It's very important to us. And somehow when they submit the final proposal after the interview, they can revise or whatever. And I don't know if they're allowed to revise, but I would thank you, Scott.
So what's common practice, and it sounds like the committee has a general theme that they're interested in, what staff is dedicated specifically to the project, and we want to know their experience. We want to meet them. So yes. What can often happen when you before the interviews, you send out the same information to each firm saying, we are interested in XYZ. Please focus on that during the interview. Whether that is, I want exterior envelope. That's what I care about. I care about the staff on the project, or, I want to see your best renderings.
Yep.
And it's certainly appropriate to express that to all three firms.
That's great. And that makes sense, because then we could say something as simple as, we want to see the project manager's experience on town halls. Period. And the people assigned that have town hall experience, because I will wiggle and shake if I'm doing a commercial printing facility and say, oh, I put in 50 presses, I put in 50 stitcher trimmers, but they have nothing to do with a newspaper. I'm using kind of voodoo, and these resumes really point it out. They can't change the resumes, but they can find someone else in the firm, to Judy's point, that did the annex. And maybe they bring that person in, maybe not the PM because they're just a great designer, but they can be involved in the front end asking the questions, because the mistakes that person made, we don't want made at ours. And that's what you're paying for, is that experience.
And I kind of took that into account on the rubric, when I was considering how these respondents addressed our needs.
Right.
And I kind of felt, and I think you put it into perspective for me, Dario, a little better. I kind of felt like all, 40, 50 people that, you can work with, a lot of them have really good experience on similar projects, but how do we get to them? So I felt that probably each of them failed in telling us, just
Right.
nailing our projects.
I want a knee surgeon.
Right, exactly. So in that way, that they each kind of failed, and telling us why they're qualified for this project.
Any objections to moving to the third applicant, or do we want to discuss HKT more?
Can I just make a comment? So the other question is whether we look at a firm that's been involved in the actual renovation versus in doing the feasibility study. I mean, how, I hear what you're saying. So are we, Dario, in terms of, most of the work is up front, but are we looking specifically for a firm who has done feasibility studies such as ours? Are we looking more for a firm that has been involved in renovation work?
I think all of the above, Linda, but you have to be looking for it within the venue of town halls. And I just did a huge one of these assessments in Chicago for a casino. And we were looking at sites, 30 some sites, but I had to have the casino expert assess a certain thing, and we had to build a printing facility. So they brought me in to say, is this site appropriate for a town hall? Okay. And that would be, think about what's important for a town hall, not just functionally, internally, that the offices are next to each other and the conference rooms are big enough and the meeting space is big enough, but what are we trying to say to our community? If we do White Cliffs, it's a beautiful building, but it's way back there. How do you address your front door? If we do 4 Main Street, how do we address parking? Because when you have town meetings, all of a sudden there's a lot of parking. So whoever's doing the feasibility study needs to know the function of the building type going on that property. So it's kind of a 3-legged stool. How do you build it? How do you price it, and how do you design it? And you can't pick a site without, in my opinion, knowing all those components. And I've had people do that without expertise. I actually wrote an article on it. People buy a site and then they say, hey, I'm going to put my building here. And I just did it in Fall River. And I said, fine, you got to spend $500,000 extra because they didn't have access to the southwest side to get AP wires coming into the building. And I call that ready, fire, aim. They already bought it. So now we got to spend a whole bunch of extra money because they didn't look at the site with respect to how a town hall fits on that site. And that's how you have to look at it. Not what's the best site as a developer, which has the best road frontage, which has the biggest sewer lines. That's important, but it's not the dog. That makes sense. I hope I'm not like,
Yep, thank you.
Why don't we move to Icon?
all right. Well, Ned Collier, I'm going back to the same thing, was the principal in charge. And Paul DiGiandomenico, say that 3 times real fast. Paul DiGiandomenico is the project manager. What I would like to do there is switch them, because Ned has done 5 or 6 town halls. He's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned with individuals. So when I looked at, project staff, Fitchburg City Hall, Oak Bluff Town Hall, Salem Town Hall, Historic City Town Hall, Sudbury. So he's like the town hall king of all the people that have applied, but he's put in as the pick. And then Paul DiGiandomenico hadn't done as many, but this company had done more. And I've not worked with Icon. I know who they are. They're a good company. But they've done, the people on our jobs have done more town halls than all the other guys combined, just one individual. And I was like, wow, that guy's got to be good, because, and Icon's a good company. They tend to be pricey, but they're good. And we hired one of their principals a couple of years ago. So I had a lot of insight into Icon from them. But that person, if we can get them to commit to being more involved, that trumps Joe Vargman, in my opinion, because if you look at that person's portfolio and with what we're looking for, he's got all 5 bases. It's a grand slam. It's and they're a good company. They're not a schlock company, but their presentation was probably the worst. But when I looked at what they had done, that was a big deal. If you go back to Ned's, Salem, he's done a ton of these, which I didn't know that someone had done so many, a certain individual, because there's not a million town halls getting built.
Dario, I was going to say that their presentation wasn't great, but they were concise and they had great experience. So they were, most well-rounded, I think.
I have to say, I was biased because I knew that this company was not one of the ones that was recommended to put forward. So I was trying to find out why, and then I saw that there's a Lisa Brothers who worked on, they're calling it the Loop Project back in 2013, the Northborough Crossing. So I was wondering if she got under somebody's skin. That's just kind of a joke on the rhetorical question. Huh?
I have no clue.
And then they did not this pick, but the Shrewsbury PD and Municipal Complex. They just had a ton of relevant projects. And then they don't even have workers' comp insurance. I found that interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
So they're kind of all over the place. They have great credentials, but they don't have a great presentation.
Yeah, no financial statement either.
And they had a lawsuit that was settled through mediation. So, but I guess everybody gets sued at some point.
well, yeah, and then I'm not voting as much for them as I am for that individual, but I just went to DiGiandomenico's thing, and he did the town hall and police station in Mass. At least he's done one, but I would beg for the Ned, and if we could get Ned, I'd be happy as a clam, because we'd be learning and not teaching.
Yeah,
That's
there,
I just thought they did all those town halls, it just was so clear that they've done this before. And the one in, I think it was Oak Bluffs, was a great picture before and after. So.
They're a growing firm. They're woman-owned, growing firm, and I've spoken with their principal, trying to hire them on a couple different jobs, and their price was always too high. So I do know them as a firm. And when I hired one of their principals, he kind of acknowledged, who and what they were. So that was some more insight to me. I don't see them. They may not have like all these legal little things, because I probably wouldn't. I have workman's comp. Never been to court or lawsuits or anything, but I'm sure if you ask them, hey, where's this stuff? Was it missing? I've never heard negatives about the firm. There are some firms out there where I have. None of these have I heard negatives about as far as companies are concerned. I think they're all very good, reputable companies. So I'm not concerned about them as corporations and professions. There are other ones that are in lawsuits all the time.
Diane, can I interject here for a second? You're the interim assistant town administrator, and by the way, congratulations to you for that.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'm wondering if we need an opinion from town council relative to Dario's ability to be a voting member when we conclude these interviews. I mean, his insight is obviously off the chart. It's valuable, but the fact that he has disclosed prior work history with these companies or individuals, I just don't want any basis for a Northborough citizen to claim that somehow we're enriching Dario by hiring a particular company that he may or may not, recommend. I'll take his input all day long, as I'm sure the committee will. I just want to make sure that we're clear on whether or not there's a conflict under town council's perspective.
I think that's, I'm sorry, Di.
Go ahead.
It's worthwhile to have council watch this meeting and determine twofold. One, if there's any concern, which I don't believe there would be, relevant to benefiting from a selection, but more so on the weighing of opinion strongly toward a firm that somebody's worked with in the past. But we can certainly reach out to town council, have them review the meeting. Tonight's a deliberation only. I don't expect the committee to be voting and selecting a firm tonight. There will be interviews, I'm assuming. So we have adequate time to make sure that it's clear and concise on where and how Dario can vote if so.
Yeah, and I'm 100% okay not voting. I don't care, but also understand these are my competitors. So in a weird way, it would be a weird conflict of interest. We do compete with these guys, but not with this type of work. Our company does not do public work. So in that respect, I don't compete. They're not going to take a job from me. Like, I'm not sitting here saying I wish I could do this study, although it would have been fun, because I don't have that portfolio. That's not in my wheelhouse, the public work. And they're not people that, there are customers, if ever. None of them have ever hired me. Our company hires other firms all over the world to do work for us. And we do a lot of it locally and with many, many firms, but they are our competitors. And if you don't want me to vote, 100% okay. If someone sees some way where there's a conflict of interest, and Aaron, I thank you for bringing that up, because if I vote and then someone says, well, he did that because, he knew Joel, and that's not why I'm doing it at all. But I get how someone could perceive that, and I'm 100% okay not voting.
So does anybody have anything else they want to say about ICON, or can we move to discussion about setting up the interviews and maybe sending out that letter as Scott had indicated?
Yeah, I have just a couple of comments. One, in terms of the scope, I didn't see any, they didn't present expertise of wetlands, historical, archaeological review, geologic and hazardous materials in their presentation. or people who have that expertise in terms of the team and consultants kind of thing. The other thing that my takeaway from reading their proposal was, and this is, it's sort of a double-edged sword. There's a drive for efficiency. And their proposal was definitely clearly an indication of efficiency in their firm. And that cuts both ways, because we want to make sure that whoever we're working with, we have access to, or that, whoever needs to speak with them has access to them, and efficiency doesn't drive ability for, those that need to work with them to be able to do that. So, and I was reading that very strongly in this proposal, more so than the others.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Linda, I thought that, and the funniest thing that came to mind was the greenest firm had the most pages, and they had a blank page between. I threw out like 25 blank pages, and I'm going, okay, this is green, and I kind of laughed. They're going to be mad at me because I printed it out, but it was ironic. The one that had all the green experience had the 200-page proposal, and the one that didn't had 90 pages. But I chuckled the whole time. Every time I threw out a blank page, I'm going, well, you got lead certificates and you put blank pages. Anyway, I did have fun doing that one piece.
Let me circle back to Scott's point at the beginning. Does the committee want to hear from town staff at all relative to their recommendations, or are we comfortable with the discussions that we've had and just moving forward to setting the interview schedule?
I would like to hear.
So we evaluated each one of the three respondents' proposals directly in accordance with the comparative evaluation criteria. They graded very similar, and we all had them in the same hierarchy. And this again is purely based on data-driven analysis, not some of the comparative items that Dario has mentioned and Linda and other committee members that weren't identified in the comparative evaluation criteria. So it was HKT, BH&A, and ICON in descending order. Part of the response, the level of complete responsiveness, maybe this attributed to the size of the project. You have a somewhat of a small project for a very large firm, or a decent sized project for a medium sized firm. So when I was on the consulting side, I had a company of 40 employees. When it was a $50,000 fee, I put a lot of effort into it. When I was going against a 300-person firm, they kind of mailed it in. So some of that may be attributed to that, but they were ranked relatively closely. There were some shortcomings here, and I believe Linda mentioned something on insurance, and there was some other shortcomings when it comes to specific staff. But it was ranked HKT 1, BH&A 2, ICON 3, but they were all very close. So the expectation is that they'll all come in for interviews, and I'm hoping the committee is okay with us sending out kind of a targeted email that says this is what we're specifically interested in. We want to meet your project manager, and please be sure that your project manager and or lead designer has town hall experience. And that's what we want to hear about, because that sounds like it's really a topic amongst the committee that's important.
And I hope, that's my opinion, folks. And it's just, I've done this so many times, and I've been burned by, the pretty cover. I hope you guys agree that it's really the person on your job. Like, again, I have no other mission than trying to do the best thing I can for this town. But that's been my experience for many, many years.
I echo that, Dario. As a consultant, I would always bring my lead engineer. This is the person who's my dam expert, and he will be working on your dam project. I'm stamping it because I have the liability insurance, but he or she is my expert. And that was my goal and objective, was to make sure that the right person was matched up with the right project. And
Damn right.
it's a good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and just to clarify, we were talking about the noun and not the expletive thing. This is my damn expert.
Right.
Yes, no end.
Okay.
Okay. No, that's good. I just,
Put that in the
don't want,
minutes.
yeah,
I'm just
take that out of the minutes, please.
I'm just joking.
Okay.
I'm on.
Well,
I'm
I
on
just,
page,
and
I'm on
okay.
page 3 here of minutes, so.
I've got some pressing matters calling my name too.
I'm
Do we
done.
feel like we're in a good place? Like we assessed everyone and feel like we know where we're moving?
Yeah, at this point, Diane or Scott, how far out do we need to set the date for the interviews? And is it going to be in person, or are we going to do a Zoom interview?
I would suggest we give them at least 3 weeks to be prepared. So the first or second week of October would be appropriate. It seems like Wednesdays work best for the committee. I think the last time we had a kind of a difficult time picking a day.
It doesn't work for me.
So do we want to shoot for Wednesdays, everyone? Maybe the 11th?
I'm not able to do Wednesdays at this time.
Okay, we could do Tuesdays if that works. Maybe the 10th or the 17th.
So anyone can't make October 10th?
I'm looking right now.
It's going to be probably relatively long. You give them each a half an hour presentation, 10 minutes of Q&A. It always rolls over a little bit. So you're talking, 2.5 hours. So
Do we have the flexibility of an earlier start time, or are we tied to 7?
I just want to point out, it doesn't matter to me, but that is the Tuesday after Columbus Day weekend, if that matters to anybody.
Oh, the 10th is?
It is, yeah.
we can
Monday.
push it up to the 3rd if that's convenient. That still gives them enough time.
I'm not able to do that day.
What about 10/24?
But what about 17, or is that broken? We already went. I thought we were looking at, did we look at the 17th?
No, that works for me.
Who cannot make the 10th?
I think 2 people, right?
No, I didn't hear anybody that said no.
I was just pointing out that that's coming out of a long weekend. If it mattered to anybody, it doesn't matter to me. I can make the 10th.
Doesn't matter to me.
So then let's set it for the 10th.
It's fine with me too.
My family celebrations on Columbus Day are a little tempered now.
So on the 10th, but
So you might have a black eye.
it would be at 7 o'clock at night.
If we could push it to 6, that would be helpful, just because of the length of the meeting. It's likely going to be 2+ hours. So getting over around 8:30 is probably appropriate.
Okay.
Does anybody have a problem at 6 o'clock start?
That's fine with me.
I'll be a little late, but not too bad. I wouldn't be here any later than 6:30. Just have soccer practice until 6.
Would you like us to push it to 6:30 then? Happy to do that.
It did seem to me, I read somewhere in Becca's instructions that the interviews were to be in person or preferred in person.
They don't have to be. It's at the pleasure of the committee on whether you want them in person or not. In person, for an interview to get to know someone, I think is very beneficial. It's much more personal, and but again, it's up to the committee.
I think we owe it to the town to meet these people in person.
I think, yeah, I had commented on the minutes before that in person's better for selecting the individuals on your project, because if all of a sudden they're rolling their eyes and pontificating and, fixing their nails while you're talking to them, you realize real quick, maybe that's not the guy you want to work with, you know. And if they're really engaging and enthusiastic, because enthusiasm has gotten me a lot of work. And if you see that they really want to do it and there's a tie, it's a killer tiebreaker that doesn't come up necessarily on Zoom.
Do
Okay,
we
so
need a motion to set the next date, or can
would
we
it
just agree
be-
on it?
would it be at town hall in the selectmen's room?
Yes.
Okay.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah, I can double check the availability of that.
Okay.
and
Do
book
we
it.
need a motion, or can we just agree to the date?
You can just agree. You don't need a motion.
All right, so then let's set it for 10/11 at 6:30 in person, town hall, selectmen's room unless otherwise designated. And the email that's going to go out from the committee, is that going to get reviewed prior to sending?
It was 10/10, just to clarify. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
10/10.
Tuesday, October 10th?
Yeah, sorry.
I will send that to the committee with individual responses in draft, with individual responses just to, staff, please.
Thank you.
Is that the letter that we're going to tell them, here's what we're looking for?
Yeah, we'll tell them the duration, the expectation. We want
Okay.
to target the staff specifically for the project.
And I think if there's deficiencies in any of them, I forget which one, someone didn't have insurance. Maybe you say to all of them, make sure you have your insurance documents, make sure so that you're not isolating one from the other. So if there's any holes that we had here, make that whole kind of a reiteration that we want that again. I forget. Actually, it was probably Icon that had the most holes, but either way, whoever they are, then we patch those, because if there's something broken, then we should know ahead of time.
Mr. Vice Chair.
They did
Unless
provide
there's-
their insurance documents. It's just they didn't have sufficient coverage.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what you do about that.
Well, what's I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chair, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they can do riders. You can get project insurance.
I mean, is it unusual for a company not to have workers' comp insurance?
I think it is. I think they probably left it out. I can't imagine they don't have it.
They either left it out or they're self-insured. There are companies out there that choose to be self-insured, especially if there's not a lot of site work and they're generally office staff. There's not a lot of exposure there, so it's not common, but I've seen it in the industry before.
Unless anybody has anything urgent, I would make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. Vice Chair.
Second,
I guess so. We're going to take a vote on adjourning. I'll start with Kristen, since she's in the upper right-hand corner.
yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Judy,
Aye.
Linda,
Yes.
Sean. Oh no,
John doesn't vote, just Aaron and you.
okay, Aaron.
Aye.
And I also agree. And Aaron, thank you very much for helping me be the vice chair, because I'm not real trained at being the boss here.
Hey, my pleasure. Great to see everybody. All right, I'm going to cut out.
All right.
Thank you all.